So, war criminal Benjamin Netanyahu has busted the lies of Antony Blinken, who has been forced to return to the US empty handed. So, what has happened? Remember, on Monday, Blinken told us that Netanyahu had accepted the ceasefire proposal, a lie that he repeated a day later in Qatar.
Israel has now accepted that proposal. I heard that directly from Prime Minister Netanyahu yesterday. And we hope and expect that Hamas will do the same.
This was after Blinken spent 3 hours behind closed doors with Netanyahu. I told you yesterday that the fact Netanyahu had refused to extend basic courtesy of accompanying Blinken for his press conference showed Blinken was lying. I mean, Blinken is the Secretary of State, for God's sake. Secretary of State from America, a country which rolls out billions of dollars worth weapons to Israel to carry out a genocide in Gaza. Without America, Israel wouldn't exist and Netanyahu wouldn't be in power. As rightly put by George Galloway, Netanyahu is nothing more than an attack dog for Blinken.
Blinken could stop it this evening. He could tell his attack dog, Netanyahu, to come to heel, or there'll be no more dog food. There'll be no more protection.
And yet, Netanyahu couldn't care much and refused to join Blinken in his press conference. By the time Blinken arrived in Egypt, it was clear that this Zionist American Secretary of State had lied once again. How do we know this? We came to know from Egyptian objections to the Israelis insisting for its presence in central Gaza and Philadelphia corridor, a Gazan territory bordering Egypt. This Netanyahu wants to be a part of any ceasefire talks in future. And Biden and Blinken told us that what Biden said on 31st of May was actually an Israeli proposal. Now the question is, if indeed this is an Israeli proposal, then why did Biden not include this? I mean, the presence of Israeli force in Gaza on 31st of May. Moments after Blinken's press conference, Netanyahu told the family members of the hostages who are in Hamas captivity at the moment that he had convinced the US Secretary of State that Israeli forces will stay in central Gaza and along the southern border with Egypt. Now, this is not what Blinken had told us on Monday. So the question is Blinken embarrassed? No, a man bereft of morality and shame has no right to feel embarrassed. His entire existence is an embarrassment to humanity. No wonder the US administration, according to BBC correspondent Tom Bettman, has said that Netanyahu's statements were, and I quote, not constructive to getting a ceasefire deal across the finish line, end of quote. So essentially, not denying with what Netanyahu has said, it's just that he shouldn't make them known to public yet. That said, there is no denying the truth that Blinken was lying, as has been the case all throughout this conflict. For more than 2 months, this man and his minions in the State Department misled all of us by backing Israel and shielding all its crimes. On the other hand, Netanyahu has shown time and again that he was simply not interested in the ceasefire. Now, even the Israeli media is now reporting that the bodies of those 6 hostages that Israeli army recovered from Khan Yunus, they were actually murdered by Israelis. Didn't I tell you time and again that Netanyahu simply doesn't care about these hostages? It's a fallacy to believe that this war criminal cares about his own people. His only objective is to manipulate his way to elongate his stay in power. Last month, this was a topic of intense discussion in the State Department press conference. This was one of those rare days when some reporters could finally muster enough courage to embarrass the State Department official.
On the talks on the ceasefire, is there any update? Israel was saying that the talks have already stopped. Did they
No, the negotiations, I'm not sure the comment to which you're referring, but the negotiations do continue. We continue to talk with the mediators about, as I said, what the remaining sticking points are and some of the practical ideas we have and that others have for how to bridge those sticking points.
Thanks.
Yeah, so.
Just to follow up on that, I mean, last week you and your colleague expressed hope that we're maybe getting close. You still feel that way? You still feel that we are getting close?
We have certainly made progress. We have resolved a number of the issues. There were some major divides between the parties. We have resolved a number of those. As the president said, we have reached a framework. And we do believe that the remaining issues are issues that can be solved. And we think there are practical ways to resolve them, and we're putting those ideas forward and trying to reach a solution. But as always, that doesn't mean we necessarily will reach one. It takes the parties agreeing to some of these ideas. So we remain optimistic, but also realistic at the same time.
So you don't think that what Mr. Netanyahu did, the Prime Minister of Israel, by reversing, a major concession that they made apparently to the negotiators this past, only yesterday or the day before, you don't think that is actually an attempt on his part to scuttle the negotiations, or if anything, just to stall it?
So I will tell you what we heard directly from two senior advisors to Prime Minister Netanyahu today. And that is that Israel is still committed to reaching a ceasefire, that Israel wants to reach a ceasefire. Obviously, they want to protect their interests. We understand that as part of the negotiating process. But they do want to reach a ceasefire and are committed to these negotiations. As I said, there are a few remaining sticking points, and we're working to try and resolve those. And we're committed to trying to do that.
You don't feel that the attack on Mawasi that killed close to 100 Palestinians, injured about 300 others, and so on, under the pretext of targeting Hamas leaders, which is really a very convenient.
A pretext is a big word, Saeed. I
just
want to make sure that's the word you mean.
Okay, I mean, under the claim that they were targeting Hamas leaders, which they never have to prove anyway. They can say, we know that this X person was there and Y person was there, so we target them, we kill all these people. Then nobody's going to ask us, and the most they can do is just, we will launch an investigation, which we never hear the results of. So you don't feel that such a crime, really, using F-35 to bomb two places, one of them, against the respondents, the first responders and so on, while the other was going on. You don't think this is an attempt by the Israeli government to just basically say, you can go, fly a kite, so to speak?
So Saeed, if you were the representative of the Palestinian people charged with negotiations for this ceasefire, is the idea that the loss of civilian life would make you less committed to reaching a ceasefire? I guess I don't understand the logic of the question.
I'm not talking about the Palestinians.
No. I'm just saying that if the idea is somehow that this strike and the loss of civilian life would somehow jeopardize negotiations for a ceasefire because the other side wouldn't want to reach a ceasefire, I don't think I understand the claim.
No, I think what we have seen in statements and indeed in the negotiations that Hamas is really, at least it appears to be committed to the negotiations and so on. But what we have seen is a pattern by the Israeli government that every time we get close to the results, we get something like this, we get a bombardment that, in the hope that it will scuttle, and leave it, to keep the onus on Hamas, so to speak. So we're not concerned about the Palestinians are committed to this ceasefire, but are you certain that Israel is committed to the points that were, stated by the president on May 31?
They are committed to the proposal that they put forward, that the president publicly described on May 31st. They have said that publicly. They have affirmed that to us privately. And they have committed to trying to work to reach a ceasefire and bridge the remaining differences. And that work is ongoing. It was ongoing here inside our building today.
If I might follow up on that.
Go ahead.
Didn't you just justify political violence?
Go ahead.
You just justified. You said Hamas should negotiate.
There are people in this room.
You just justified.
There are people in this room who come and raise their hand and ask questions, and I'm going to call on them. Go ahead, please.
Please. Thank you, ma'am. I just want to follow up on your answer to Saeed about the reported in Israeli media that the Benjamin Netanyahu and his government is trying to sabotage the negotiation every time we reach to a point when it's closed. And I remember there was so much hope when you received the latest Hamas proposal, and there was statements from the White House and the State Department, but we heard over the weekend, either from sources in the Israeli media or from Mr. Netanyahu in his press conference, that he is not budging. He will stick to the letter of the proposal of the May 31st, which, and sources also in the Egyptian side said that the Israeli delegation is just stalling. There is a discord among the Israelis, and they also said that the negotiation is in a dead end.
So we often see reports out of the negotiations, and I will just, without attributing anything to those specific claims, note that oftentimes the reports we see from the parties involved in the negotiations don't reflect reality. Sometimes you see people make claims to try to leverage or try to increase their leverage in the negotiations. That said, we continue to hear from Israel directly that they want to reach a ceasefire, and they're committed to the proposal.
As I speak, Israel has once again bombed a school in Gaza, this time an UNRWA-run school, killing many children. I can't show you the visuals of these children and how they have been murdered. Just go to Twitter and search Gaza school children. These are pretty gory. And I have no doubt that Israelis and their American backers are loving the sight of poor Palestinian children suffering. That's it from me now. Thank you so much for your continued support to my journalism on buymecoffee.com. Your support is absolutely key for the future of our fearless journalism. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do so, because that's one of the many ways you can support independent journalism. God bless you all.